The eviction notice was taped to the front door with a single piece of blue painter's tape. Like whoever left it couldn't even be bothered to press it flat against the wood. Audrey Callahan stood in the hallway of her apartment building, still wearing her hospital scrubs, a grocery bag hanging from one wrist, her 6-year-old son Theo pressed against her hip. She had worked a double shift. Her feet hurt in a way that started at the heel and ran straight up through her spine. And now this. She peeled the notice off slowly, read it once, folded it in half and tucked it under her arm. She did not want Theo to see her face while she read it. "Mom, can we have soup tonight?" "Yeah, buddy, we can have soup." She unlocked the door and let him run inside first. 22 months. That was how long she had worked nights in the laundry processing unit at St. Carver Regional Hospital, sorting and folding linens that would be wrapped around strangers in their worst moments. Surgical gowns, ICU blankets, the thin white sheets they pulled over patients who didn't make it. Before that, 7 years as a home health aide for an agency that paid $11 an hour and mileage that never quite covered gas. She had done the math more times than she could count. There had never been a version of the numbers that worked out easily. There had only been versions she could survive and versions she couldn't. Theo's father had left 3 years ago, not in a dramatic way. No fight, no slammed doors. He had simply stopped coming home more and more until one day he just didn't. He sent money when he remembered, which was not often. Audrey had learned to build a life out of the gaps between what she needed and what she had. But the rent increase had come in August. $212 a month more, effective 60 days from the date of the letter. She had called the leasing office twice. The second time, a woman, named Sandra, polite tired, told her the ownership group had made the decision at the regional level, and there was nothing the local office could do. Audrey had filed for rental assistance through the county. She had been told the wait list was 14 months. She had made the math work for October, barely. November had been a plate of rice, and whatever protein was on sale, and 3 conversations with herself at 2 in the morning about whether she had made every right decision or just the only decisions that were available. By December, she was 2 months behind. The night she came home to the eviction notice, Theo had a cold. She could hear it in his breathing when she put him to bed. That thick, congested sound that always scared her a little, because his asthma sometimes used a cold as a door. She sat on the edge of his mattress after he fell asleep and watched his chest rise and fall, and made a kind of private deal with the universe that she had no authority to make. If he stays okay, I can handle the rest of it. She sat at the kitchen table after midnight, with a legal pad and a pen and wrote down every number. The eviction hearing was scheduled for January 14th. She had 11 days. She could ask her sister in Columbus for help, but her sister had 3 kids, and a husband who had been laid off in September. She could call the 21211 helpline again, but the last time they had given her a list of organizations with wait lists longer than her problem. She could go to the hospital's HR department and ask about the hardship fund she had heard existed, but never looked into because pride is a strange and stubborn thing that does not serve you at 2 in the morning. She wrote HR hardship fund on the legal pad, underlined it twice, and then sat looking at it until she wasn't sure what she was looking at anymore. Audrey had started at St. Carver through a temp agency placement that eventually converted to permanent. She knew the building the way you learn any place you spend more hours in than your own home. The elevator on the east wing that stuck between floors 2 and 3. The supply closet that smelled like industrial bleach and old coffee. The small break room where the overnight staff kept a coffee maker that had been there since before anyone currently employed could remember. She knew her coworkers by the sounds of their footsteps. She knew which nurses tended to leave their patients' rooms with the IV stand slightly crooked, and which ones left everything exactly as they found it. What she did not know, what very few people at St. Carver knew, was anything real about the woman who owned it. Lorraine Stowe had inherited a controlling interest in the hospital group from her father, who had built it from a single regional facility in the early 1980s. She was 51 years old. She ran the group from a corporate office downtown and came to the individual hospitals twice a year for operational reviews. Most of the staff had never seen her in person. She existed in the building as a concept, her name on compliance memos, her signature on annual reports, her photograph on the About page of the hospital's website, dark blazer, composed expression, nothing volunteered. Audrey had seen that photograph exactly once in an employee orientation packet she had been given during her first week. She had not thought about it again. The night the break room coffee maker finally stopped working, the heating element giving out sometime between 2 and 4 in the morning on a Wednesday, Audrey went looking for the courtesy cart that the volunteer services team sometimes left outside the chapel on the second floor. It was usually stocked with decent coffee from a local bakery and occasionally, if you were lucky, small containers of soup. Theo had been sick for 5 days. Audrey had slept, total, maybe 11 hours across those 5 days. She had called in sick twice to stay with him, which meant 2 shifts without pay, which meant the math had gotten considerably worse. She found the cart in the corridor outside the chapel, which at 3:15 in the morning was empty and dim, lit only by the small lamp near the window seat at the far end. She poured herself a cup of coffee and stood for a moment in the quiet, holding the paper cup with both hands, and did not cry, which took more effort than it should have. "The soup is tomato basil," said a voice. "I think there's still one left." Audrey turned around. A woman was sitting in the window seat at the far end of the corridor. She was wearing a visitor's badge clipped to a dark coat, and she was holding a cup identical to Audrey's. And she looked the way people look when they have been in a hospital for a long time. Not sick themselves, but carrying it. "Thank you," Audrey said. She found the soup, opened it, wrapped her hands around it. The woman gestured at the seat across from her without pressure, an invitation, not an expectation. Audrey sat down. "You work here?" the woman asked. "Laundry processing. Nights." Audrey paused. "You have family here?" "My mother." The parking structure was visible through the glass, orange lit and mostly empty. "She came in 5 days ago. Stroke. They're telling me she's stable, but..." She stopped. Stable means different things at different hours. Audrey nodded. She knew what that meant. She had worked in buildings where people waited like this. She had seen it from the other side of the hallway. They sat in silence for a moment, which was not uncomfortable. At 3 in the morning in a hospital corridor, silence is often the most honest thing available. "Do you have kids?" the woman asked. "A son. 6. Audrey looked at her coffee. "He's sick right now, actually. I had to come in. I've already missed 2 shifts this week." The woman looked at her with an expression Audrey couldn't quite read. Not pity, something more careful than that. "How old is he?" 6. He has asthma. Colds turn into things pretty fast with him. Who's with him?" "My neighbor, Mrs. Petrakis. She's 73 and she stays up late anyway. She told me she'd text if anything changed." Audrey looked at her phone. No messages. "She's good. He's fine." "But you're not, entirely," it was said plainly without accusation. Audrey looked up. "No," she said. "Not entirely." She didn't know why she said what she said next. Exhaustion maybe, or the particular honesty that 3 in the morning extracts from you whether you want to give it or not. "I got an eviction notice last week. The hearing is in 9 days. She stopped. "I don't know why I'm telling you that." "Maybe because you haven't told anyone else," the woman said. Audrey thought about that. It was true. She had told no one. She had carried it the same way she carried most things, pressed flat against her chest so it wouldn't show. "I filed for rental assistance in October," she said. "The wait list is 14 months. I looked into the hospital's hardship fund. I wrote it on a legal pad. I haven't actually gone to HR yet because..." She stopped again. "Because it felt like losing," the woman said. "Yes." The woman was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Go to HR. Tomorrow. Whatever shift you work, go before or after. Ask for Patricia Downs. Use my name." She paused. "Lorraine Stowe." The name registered slowly. The way certain information does when your brain is operating on 11 hours of sleep across 5. Then it landed. Audrey looked at her. The visitor's badge. The dark coat. The composed expression that was up close, not composed at all. Just the face of a woman who had been sitting with her sick mother for 5 days and had come to the corridor at 3 in the morning for the same reason Audrey had. Audrey started. "Go to HR," Lorraine said again. "That fund exists. It's not advertised well, which is something we're going to change, but it exists, and it exists for exactly this." She looked at Audrey steadily. "You show up here. You do the work that nobody thinks about but everybody needs. You shouldn't have to lose your apartment because a landlord's ownership group made a regional decision." Audrey sat with that. The parking structure lights shifted outside the window, a car moving through the orange wash of the structure. "My mother told me once," Lorraine said, "that the real measure of a place isn't how it treats its important people. It's how it treats the people it's decided aren't important." She looked toward the door of her mother's room down the hall. "I've been thinking about that a lot this week." They didn't talk much after that. Audrey finished her soup. She thanked Lorraine, genuinely. And Lorraine nodded the way people nod when they mean it. Audrey went back to the processing unit. She folded linens until 6 in the morning. She thought about what she was going to say to Patricia Downs in HR, and then she thought about what Lorraine had said about her mother, and then she thought about Theo asleep at Mrs. Petrakis' apartment, and she thought about the legal pad with HR hardship fund, underlined twice, and the pride that had kept her from going sooner, and whether pride was really pride or whether it was just fear wearing a more dignified coat. She went to HR at 7:15, before the morning shift changed over and the office got busy. Patricia Downs was a small woman in her 60s with reading glasses on a beaded chain, and a careful manner that Audrey immediately understood to be competence rather than coldness. Audrey gave Lorraine's name. Patricia's expression shifted slightly, not surprise exactly, more like recognition of something she had been expecting to arrive. "Sit down," Patricia said. "Tell me what's happening." Audrey told her, all of it, the rent increase, the waitlist, the 2 missed shifts, the hearing in 9 days, the legal pad. She did not perform helplessness because she was not helpless. She laid out the facts the way she had learned to lay out facts, clearly without apology, because the situation did not require her to apologize for it. Patricia listened. She made notes. She asked specific questions: the amount owed, the landlord's name, whether Audrey had documentation from the eviction notice, what the exact date of the hearing was. "The hardship fund can cover up to 3 months of verified housing arrears," Patricia said. "The process normally takes 10 to 15 business days, but there's an expedited review for active legal proceedings." She looked at Audrey. "I'll flag this for expedited. I'll need the eviction documentation and your last 2 pay stubs. Do you have those? I can have them here, within the hour." Patricia nodded. "One more thing," she said. She slid a folder across the desk. "Miss Stowe sent this down this morning." Audrey opened it. Inside was a memo from Lorraine Stowe to the Department of Human Resources, dated that morning. It outlined a set of proposed changes to the hospital's employee assistance infrastructure. Improved visibility of the hardship fund. An emergency housing liaison position. A partnerships initiative with 3 local shelters and 2 emergency rental assistance nonprofits. The memo was detailed. It had clearly been in process for some time, but the date at the top was today, and the note clipped to the front, handwritten in blue ink, said simply, "Start with this one." Audrey sat for a moment holding the folder. She thought about the corridor at 3 in the morning, the courtesy cart, the tomato basil soup, a woman in a dark coat sitting in the window seat because she had nowhere better to put herself while she waited for news about her mother. She thought about how nobody had known Lorraine Stowe was there that night. No announcement, no staff notification, no administrator escort. Just a woman in a visitor's badge drinking bad courtesy cart coffee because her mother was sick, and it was 3 in the morning and she was human before she was anything else. Audrey thought about her own mother, who had died when Audrey was 26. She thought about what she would have given to have more 3 in the morning corridors with her. More soup from courtesy carts. More quiet window seats with the parking structure lights shifting outside. She thought about Theo. She handed Patricia the folder back and said she'd be back with the documents within the hour. The expedited review was approved 4 days later. The hardship fund covered the full amount owed. The eviction hearing was postponed pending documentation and eventually dismissed. On the morning of January 15th, 1 day after the hearing had originally been scheduled, Audrey stood in her kitchen making Theo's oatmeal and looked at the legal pad on the counter, the one with HR hardship fund underlined twice. She tore the page off, folded it once, and put it in the recycling bin under the sink. Theo came running in from the hallway still wearing his dinosaur pajamas, his hair sideways from sleep, the asthma completely resolved, his cold entirely gone. "Is it a school day?" "It's a school day." He made the face that 6-year-olds make about school days, which Audrey had learned to appreciate because it meant he was well enough to object to things. "Can I have the oatmeal with the brown sugar?" "You can have the oatmeal with the brown sugar." He climbed up onto his chair and began arranging his spoon with the particular seriousness that small children apply to spoons. 3 weeks later, Audrey received a letter from hospital administration informing her that a new role was being created in the Employee Support Services Department. A position that would serve as a direct liaison between frontline staff and existing assistance resources, helping employees navigate the hardship fund and external housing programs. The letter asked if she would be interested in applying. The salary was listed. It was more than she was making in laundry processing. It included full benefits, a schedule that aligned with school hours, and the specific notation that the role had been designed with single-parent employees in mind. Audrey read the letter at the kitchen table, twice, then set it down. She thought about the way Lorraine had said it. That fund exists, and it exists for exactly this. With the particular conviction of someone who had just decided something. Who had been sitting in a corridor at 3 in the morning with their own grief, and their own mother, and their own ledger of what mattered, and had arrived at a number. She thought about what it means to be seen by someone who did not have to look. She applied for the position that afternoon. She was called for an interview the following Tuesday. When she walked into the HR conference room, Patricia Downs was at the table, and next to Patricia, unexpectedly, quietly, was Lorraine Stowe. Lorraine looked at her the same way. She had looked at her in the corridor, not with the careful executive composure of her website photograph, but with the direct human attention of a woman who had been awake at 3 in the morning, and knew what that looked like on another person's face. "I'm glad you came in," Lorraine said. "I should have come in sooner," Audrey said. Lorraine shook her head once. "You came in when you were ready. That's how it works." Audrey started the new role the first Monday of February. On her first day, she sat across from a man named Greg who worked in facilities and was 3 weeks from a foreclosure. She had a list of resources, a direct line to 3 nonprofits, and access to the expedited review process she had navigated herself 6 weeks earlier. She did not tell Greg her own story. That was not her job. Her job was to sit across from him and listen to his, and then help him find the path through it. But she understood the specific shape of what he was carrying. The legal pad, the underlined words. The pride that was really just fear in a more dignified coat. And that understanding was the most useful thing in the room. That evening she picked Theo up from after-school care 20 minutes early. For the first time in as long as she could remember. He was surprised to see her. He ran across the pickup area with his backpack bouncing and grabbed her hand with both of his and asked if they could stop for hot chocolate on the way home. She said yes. They sat in a window booth at the coffee shop on Mercer, and Audrey drank her coffee. And Theo pressed his nose against the cold glass and fogged it up with his breath and made a face in the fog with his finger, which made her laugh in a way that started deep and came out without effort. She had not laughed that way in a long time. Some things come back slowly. A good night's sleep. The feeling of knowing there is enough. The ability to sit in a window booth with your son in the late afternoon and not be doing math in your head. But they come back. That much Audrey knew now. They come back.